it's Spencer and welcome back to my shop. On this episode we're going to take another look at my Z50R. I've been doing a bunch of work to this thing and I'm getting close to the finish line finally after about a year of working on this thing. I got all my parts back from Cerakoting, so thank you to Randy at RC Hot Coats for getting that done for me. I appreciate it. He did a very nice job. I'm a terrible painter, so I'd rather just send it out to somebody else so I don't screw it up. But I've gotten all that stuff put back together, so we'll take a look at my bike here in a second and get going with some more stuff. But before I do all that, let's show you a little video of that titanium pipe turning blue. This was the first time I had started it up since I had built the engine and fixed the tank and done all of that fun stuff, built the pipe and everything. So it's always cool to see a titanium pipe turn blue. So check it out. As you could tell from the video, I got the clutch cover Cerakoted in tungsten gray. I also had the fork legs done in burnt bronze. I also had the ignition cover done in tungsten gray as well, and then I ground the letters back off of it so that they were shiny and you could see the aluminum up underneath it. Since the last video, I mounted a CRF 110 style brake pedal to this thing. I'm using a Kinetic MX peg bar for a CRF 110, so it makes sense that I had to use a CRF 110 style brake pedal to get it to fit up correctly. And it wasn't a very expensive brake pedal. I just wanted to see if I could make it work on this with the CRF 110 hardware and everything. So I did have to machine a pivot bushing that goes against the frame right here. The CRF 110 one is much bigger, and so I made an ultra slick Delrin bushing that pressed inside of there and spaced it out away from the frame the way that I wanted to. And surprisingly, the CRF 110 spring actually worked out really nicely. I had to cut off the little loop that came out from right there originally for a crankcase breather, and then I was able to slide that spring on there and get it to where it should be. Now that we're at this point, I'm going to put some custom graphics on this thing. Shout out to Chris Adamson at AO1 Designs for coming up with these things for me. They turned out sweet. So we're going to put them on now and see how it looks. To keep going with the trend of the Works bike, I want to build an Airbox for this thing, and I want it to be tucked up underneath the rear number plate right about here. So I don't really like pod filters on pit bikes. I never have. They get dirty really quick because they're out there in the open, but they also make this sucking noise that you can hear the entire time, and I'm just not a big fan of it. So the first problem that we run into is that this is where the CDI was mounted originally. So I'm gonna bend this bracket around hopefully without having to cut it and re-weld it, and have the CDI up underneath the subframe back here tucked away, and that gives me more room to work with on this left side in front of the rear shock. So we'll do that now. Okay, so now the CDI is tucked up underneath the subframe and out of the way. That frees up a lot more room for me to do what I want. This is a KTM 50 air filter, like 2001 through 2008. I bought it because it's a two-stage air filter with the coarser foam on top and the denser foam on the bottom. And it's just a simple rectangle that I thought would fit in here nicely. And then I can cut down. I kind of drew some lines where I think I'm going to cut an angle in this thing and then make my airbox angled so that it fits up underneath the fender and smoothly and kind of tucked out of the way. So I'm gonna cut out some cardboard now and try to figure out exactly how I'm gonna make this work. So after a lot of deliberation with myself, I designed something that I think is going to work okay. Basically, I'm gonna have a back plate here, and then I'm going to bend this strip all the way around and weld it along there to box it all in. And then this will be suspended somewhere in the middle, also welded to this strip. And then there will be a top plate here that will have this strip around it that will slide over to hold everything centered. And then I will 3D print an air filter cage out of plastic. That's what I'm thinking anyways. We're gonna try it. I'm gonna anneal these strips of aluminum first, and I will show you how I do that with an oxyacetylene torch really quickly, and that should make it malleable enough that I can bend it around and do what I need to do as far as welding goes. So we'll get started now, and then you'll see it all come together, I hope. If you've watched my other videos, you know I've covered this quite a few times, but the easy way to anneal aluminum is with an oxyacetylene torch or a MAP gas torch. And you just mark the aluminum top and bottom with some Sharpie and then heat it up until the Sharpie marks disappear. You can also do it with the soot from a candle, and that works fine as well. After forming the outside of the air box, I went ahead and ground down the weld and made it smooth again. And then, as you can see here, I'm fitting the portion that the air filter is actually going to sit on inside of the air box and welding it inside and out. I also made a little threaded insert that fits into the part that the air filter sits on and tacked it in place as well. Here it is after welding it all up. I went ahead and welded the bottom first, and then I went around and welded the top side. Reason being is that this is only 80 thousandths thick aluminum, so I had a lot of spots where the fit up just wasn't perfect in there from me just bending the outside of this box by hand. So it kept wanting to kind of blow through when I was welding it on the back side. So I just went ahead and did the inside too. It won't be a problem. I'll just alter my design for my air cage just a little bit to allow for the radius of the weld. And then once I cut my air filter down, that's kind of how it'll sit in there. I still have to punch a hole through the middle of it. And then the box is gonna sit up above that to allow the air to come in. I'm gonna cut out like a little hole at the top of the air box cover just to allow the air to scoop in. So now I have to continue bending the outside. I've kind of already started a little bit, just kind of forming it by hand and stuff. I'm gonna heat it up again and make it really malleable and try to get it formed out the rest of the way and make it a snug fit, and then I'll weld a lid on there. After checking my fitment on the bike, I've decided I'm going to slant this just a little bit on the back side, starting from about right there and then slanting it kind of like so. That way I can tuck this closer against the frame being right here, and keep my number plate on the left-hand side from bumping up against the airbox cover. So I wanted to tuck it in there as much as possible. I don't want to slant it too much because I'm trying to keep as much volume in this as possible, but I think this will help my fitment out a good bit. So I'm going to do that now. after quite a bit of welding and grinding on this thing and everything, making everything smooth, I welded a mount on here with a couple bushings to kind of stand it off of the frame a little bit and get it mounted where I want. So I've already cut out the air filter and punched a hole in it for the mounting, and it just slides in here like this. And then this is the cage that I came up with. It's just something that I 3D printed right here on my Prusa 3D printer. And this is just a cage that keeps tension on this thing, and it lines up with the cutouts that I did with my plasma table and allows the air to pass through. So this just goes on just like this, and then I have a lid. The lid is just held on by one bolt in the center, which goes through the air filter. So there it is with the lid on it. I'm going to cut a either titanium bolt or an aluminum one and kind of just make like a little thumb screw. This setup's nice because I can reach up underneath the number plate and pull the lid off and change the air filter without having to take the plastics off, which was what I was going for, but I wasn't sure if it was going to work. Now that we're done with the Airbox, we can get started on the tube that's going to connect the Airbox to the carburetor. What I did was I cut out a piece of 1.5" aluminum tube at just an arbitrary angle. I don't even know what that angle is. I just cut it out basically and made it relatively sharp, but not too sharp, to where it would clear the frame right here when I go to wrap this tube around. I'm gonna try something different that I've never tried before, and if it doesn't work out, it's okay. I can always go back to just making a long aluminum tube that goes right here and then just a short rubber piece of tube in between them to connect them. But I would like to try to 3D print an entire Airboot that goes from this tube to here with flanges on it to where it will slide over the top of it and a groove for hose clamps. So I want to make it look as nice as possible and everything, and I figured that would be cool. I've never printed with TPU before, so we'll see how it goes. So first things first, I've already marked out where this tube is going to go. I am going to take a hole saw and cut out this profile, and then I'm going to weld this tube on here. So we'll do that first, and then we'll go design something and 3D print it. Here's the Airboot design that I came up with using Fusion 360. I mapped out the curve that I wanted with a piece of welding rod just strung up in between my carburetor and the Airbox to get the curve correct. I put an indentation in it for the frame just to give myself some extra clearance. This will be printed with Ninja Flex TPU, which is apparently pretty fuel resistant, but time will tell. After 3D printing the Airboot, I ran into a couple little issues with my first design, so I altered them and printed another one. This is the original one that I showed you the rendering of, and as you can see, I made an indentation for the frame, and that was causing a kind of kink right there, causing it to gooseneck. Probably because my angle is a little bit off that I came up with in between the carb and the Airbox. But that's okay. I took the indentation out, made the walls a little bit thicker so they wouldn't distort so much, and then put it on there, and it looks great now. The only other thing I did off camera was I took the lid off of the Airbox and drilled a series of holes in the top of it to allow air in. Now that we have the Airbox mounted back on there and ready to go, we'll take it off the stand and go outside and try it out and see how it runs. that's gonna about do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you like my videos, I'd appreciate if you took the time to like and subscribe and all that fun stuff. It really helps me out a lot. I hope you guys have a good Christmas, and I'll see you on the next one.